And welcome everyone to incorporate the creation and teaching of lessons for K-12 students into your college course. Today, we're lucky to have Dr. Jennifer Gubbels from Augustana University here to offer insight on student retention. Dr. Gubbels has taught biology at Augustana University since 2009 and has been using and experimenting with active learning and service learning based strategies since she began. She co authored a publication titled Creating and Teaching Science Lessons in K 12 Schools Increases Undergraduate Students' Science Identity, published in 2018 at the Journal of Microbiology Education. She was honored with the Augustana Student Association Faculty of the Year Award in 2018. Let's get started.
Thank you very much. And thanks for inviting me and picking my topic. I love talking about this, and thanks for coming. And I even have a former student here that's done this. So that's really great to have Jade here too. Okay, so the outline for what I'm going to talk about today, I'm going to talk about examples of how I've incorporated this service learning into two of my upper level courses a little bit differently. So you can kind of see how it might be adjusted in different ways. I'm going to talk about some benefits of this activity for the college students and things that they have enjoyed about it. I'll tell you some specific steps to think about for how to incorporate this into your own college class. I'll answer some questions, and then I'd like you to brainstorm how you might incorporate this into one of your courses and hopefully get some ideas from the chat or from the room, and so we can share with each other what we've thought about. So I have two examples of this, and I've got lots of pictures of my students doing this in the classroom, so that's the pictures that you're going to see. First is my advanced human physiology class, and for this one, I chose the five senses. So we didn't have a lab dedicated to the five senses in that course. And so I thought, well, we could use that, and that lends itself really well to hands-on activities. It's something that we were going to go visit a fifth grade classroom, and so it lends itself also really well to younger kids learning about it. And so that was how I picked that. And it's easy to divide up my students into five groups. And so I've got 4 students or so, college students per group, divided them up into 5 groups. And then we went to the school. And what happens is we have about an hour at the school, and we have kind of an intro. I have one student volunteer to be the person who kind of introduces the whole activity to the classroom. And then the students go through each session. The elementary students are divided into groups of 4 or 5, depending on how many are in that classroom. And then they rotate through each of the 5 senses. And so each of my students, the college students, give their little spiel 5 times during the time. And so they have about 10 or 11 minutes to talk about their particular topic. And that has worked pretty well. So when I give the students their assignment to make up their assignment for the K-12 students, they need to come up with an introduction, 1 to 2 objectives. They always want to, as all educators would like to do, always want them to learn 4 or 5 things, but I try to get you only have 10 minutes, really 1 to 2, maybe 2, but really 1 objective is probably better that you want the students to learn. And a hands-on activity that they do with the students, they need to create a visual aid, and then they have to have a very brief assessment at the end to see if the students actually learned what the college students wanted them to learn. And so they get some feedback from the elementary students to see how they did in their teaching ability. And then we do a reflection, and we'll talk more about the importance of that in a little bit. For my upper level immunology class, I do it a little bit differently, and we do the flu shot skit. And so I have the students, at first I used to have the whole class come up with a skit, and they each had different parts, and they were talking about what happens when you get the flu shot and what the immune system is doing and how it protects you from getting the flu. But it was hard to make sure that everyone was held accountable for what was happening. And so I changed it a little bit, and I have a group that's responsible for like an opening skit. And then I divided the rest of the class into 4 groups. One kind of has each different parts of the immune system. So B cells, T cells, phagocytes, and I'm trying to remember what's hidden underneath here. I can't remember, but it'll be on your slides. physical barriers. That's what it is. And so they talk about, how the virus is, how the immune system is protecting you against all of those things. And the B cell and T cell one really integrating the flu shot part. Again, the same idea in intro, one or two objectives, hands-on activity, visual aid, and then a reflection. So that's just kind of an overview. But some doing this that I've seen from my students is that in our publication, we measured the student's sense of scientific identity, which has gone up because they are empowered to speak about what they know to younger students. And so they really feel like they know something, they have something to share, and they have the ability to share it. So that has been really wonderful. And then developing a lesson gives them practice and appreciation for teaching. And so a lot of my students are going into healthcare careers, which means that they're going to have to teach something to someone who may not have the background that they have. And so they learn how to break something down into simpler parts and describe it to somebody else, which is really helpful. It encourages development of skills not normally assessed. It is really fun to go to these classrooms and see my students that, were really quiet in class, but then when they're around kids, they totally, they just light up, and they are really great with working with kids. And I never knew that they had that part of them. So it brings out aspects of your students that you didn't even know, especially the visual aid part as well. You find out that some of your students are really amazing artists and you had no idea. And other just it just assesses different skills that are not content based, that are really fun to see in your students. It gets students out into the community, working with students of diverse backgrounds. The school that we go to is a lower income school, and it is very diverse. It's more diverse than the student population at Augustana. And so that's also really great for our students to get exposure to a more diverse population of students that are younger than them. And I think as Augustana becomes more diverse, as we reach our diversity goals, it'll be really great for those students to see students that look like them, that are in college, and that can be great role models for them. And I also want them to have this idea that after that they're biologists and now they have a responsibility to be able to explain science to other people if need be, and that they, as they take this with them throughout their lives, that they should think about, volunteering at their kids' school, or feel comfortable talking about science to people in their communities. So these are the steps that we're going to go through. And I'm not going to read all of these right now, but we're going to go through each one of these one at a time so you can kind of think about, hopefully you have a course in your mind that you're thinking about, maybe that you could incorporate this into. And we'll just kind of walk through each one of these. So the first one is, what do you want them to learn that enhances the learning that's already happening in the classroom? So again, I picked the 5 senses because it was easier for me to divide my groups up. It is applicable to a lot of hands-on activities. It's good for kids. So choose a topic that complements what you're learning in the classroom. Also in immunology, I really wanted them to be able to talk about the flu shot and how it works, and it became relevant in a lot of ways after COVID as well, and about how vaccines work and how to be able to explain that to someone who might know how that works. And so it's helpful to choose a topic that complements what you're learning, a topic that lends itself well to hands-on activities. And you need to be able to think about in your own mind, what are some examples of hands-on activities, because there'll be groups that will just come to you and say, we have no idea what to do. And so, to be able to feed them a few ideas is helpful. And then topics that can be divided into parts are also helpful. So you can divide your students up into groups. Logistics are really important. Contacting the teachers at the beginning of the semester. And if you don't know any teachers in your area, you could ask your education colleagues for teacher recommendations, and they probably know some alums from your school that are teaching in your town that they could hook you up with. And typically I found the teachers are really excited to have you come. And we always schedule it at the end of the semester in May, so we have plenty of time to develop the activity. And typically by May, the teachers and the students are all tired and they are excited for something new and different to happen in their classroom. So that works out really nicely. The transportation has never really been a problem. We just have each group drive themselves to the school. And we do it during a lab period or the class period. So our lab periods for the physiology class are 3 hours. And so there's plenty of time for us to have everybody get there, 10 minutes to get there, an hour for the activity, 10 minutes to get back to campus, and then we talk through a reflection. In immunology class, I incorporate it during the lecture because there's no lab for that course. And that lecture is an hour and 10 minutes because it's twice a week. And so we do the activity, but then we do the reflection on a different day. But having the reflection is important, as I'll talk about in a little bit. The one thing that I've struggled with the most is figuring out equal work for the groups. Like I said, especially when I tried to have everybody do one thing, that didn't work out so well. And so dividing the students into groups and giving them a specific task works a lot better. Okay, so prepare the students. So how much time is this going to take from your, in your syllabus? So again, for my physiology class, the labs are 3 hours. I took one part of a lab period to make their lesson. So maybe half of a lab, so an hour and a half or so for them to, I give them an outline with those different topics, intro, objectives, hands-on activity, et cetera, assessment. And so they have to fill that out. That takes about an hour and a half. And then we do another part of a lab period as a dress rehearsal. So some of the college students pretend to be fifth graders, and then then they do their activity with the college students, and we give them feedback on how that works. I also have a box now, since I've been doing this for a long time, a couple of boxes now of just stuff that students have bought over the years to help them with the hands-on activities. You can see here, there's some plastic eggs and pipe cleaners and things like that. And so I have a couple of boxes of just kind of random things that students can look through to use to help them think about what their hands-on activity might be. And in the beginning, I told them that you could spend $10 of department money and bring us the receipts, and we'll reimburse you for a few things if you need them to think about how you want to do your activity. So, but by now I've got a pretty decent collection of random things that the students can use. And then one lab period for going to the school and presenting. So, and then the reflection. So the same idea for immunology, when I incorporated it into that little bit longer lecture, the hour and 10 minutes, one lecture to make the lesson, another one to do the dress rehearsal. And I scheduled these about a week apart so that they had some time to fix some things and to get ready. So after the dress rehearsal, part of their grade for going to the school and presenting was that they incorporated all of the comments and suggestions from the dress rehearsal. Promote reflection. So there was a semester when, I'm not sure what happened. I was tired or something, I don't know, but I left off the reflection part of this assignment, and it was actually really interesting because I had students write in the comments for the course, I don't know why we went through so much work to learn about the 5 senses. and just a whole bunch of confusion about what the point of this activity was. And so now I make sure to tell them, this is not just about learning the 5 senses. This is about you learning how to explain something difficult to people that don't have a background. This is about you getting out into the community and thinking about science and how to talk to people about it. And so it's really important to tell them why you're doing this and all the other good things that they're getting from it besides content, because our students are always kind of uber focused on content, and they're not always thinking about all the other skills that they can get from doing some of these activities. So it's really important to do that. And it's also important for them to kind of talk through what happened after we get back. So after we get back, there's a graded assignment where they have to answer these questions in their groups. First, they do a 1 to 2 sentence introduction about what they did, and then they answer all of these questions in kind of a 1-page data summary. So they have data from their assessment. They come up with, some true false questions or some multiple choice questions, and they have the students answer them at the very end of their, the last minute of their time together. They have the elementary students answer questions to see if they learned what they were supposed to learn. And so they compile that data because they had, 4 groups of students come through, and then they learn where there might have been some gaps in what they were explaining and what they may have missed. And so they think about what they would do differently if they did it again. What did your students learn? And so they summarize their data there. And what did you learn is the other question there. And the what did you learn is always interesting because they talk about how the students didn't really get it until we did a hands-on activity. That it usually comes out. And I'm always so pleased to hear that because I'm like, yes. And now you know why we do hands-on activities in our class. We do case studies and we do, this other stuff. And I don't just lecture at you all day. It's because when you do a hands-on activity, you really get it. And now you saw that happening to somebody else. And so that also is nice to be able to reinforce my method of teaching to my students so that they understand why I do what I do. And then at the end, they share any anecdotes, and there's always some really funny things that happen. One time we gave the elementary students pool noodles. Well, I didn't give them, the students gave them pool noodles, and they had to like beat the virus particles, and some of them got a little too excited about the beating of the viral particles. So we all had a good laugh about that. There it is, them beating the virus particles. So I don't think we'll do pool noodles again. That got a little too violent for me. But and I encourage you to think about really, any kind of unique teaching thing that you do about publishing it. And when you think about it ahead of time, it makes it a lot easier as you're, setting it up. And there's still a lot of room for new things, new twists on this activity that would be publishable. So, interviewing the elementary students would be interesting to see what they think about it, or any other aspect or whatever kind of twist you want to put on it, because it really is an interesting experience and a good learning experience to go through the process of publishing these things. And my co-author here, Dr. Vidiello, she took students to high school class and did an epigenetics activity with students in high school. So, you don't have to go to an elementary school. Obviously, you can modify this for all kinds of different things. Okay, so I'm going to break here for a minute and see if there's any questions. And then my next slide is thinking about, and maybe I'll just leave it on this slide. And you're going to put up the camera again. I want you to think about a class that you could envision doing this in and kind of brainstorm. But before we do that, I can answer any questions that you might have here or on the chat.
Thank you. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about, you're assessing skills in your undergraduate students that you're not typically assessing in other classes. And I was wondering if you talk a little bit about how the students' actual performance is getting translated into their grades for this assignment.
That's a good question. And maybe it's not so much that I'm assessing those skills, but they're able to use them and I can see them. I mean, I don't grade them I do grade them actually on the quality of their visual aid. I mean, if they put no effort into it, they're not going to do that well. But some of the other things, like how well they interact with the students, that's a little more nebulous. Some of the things have just been like surprising things that came out of students that I didn't realize, and not necessarily that I'm assessing it, but that they were able to use skills that they haven't been able to use in other classes. But the way that I assess it is that I grade that initial outline that they hand in, and then we grade there's a rubric for the dress rehearsal. And then as long as they make the changes from the dress rehearsal and show up at the last time when we present to the elementary students, and then they do the reflection, then I grade the reflection. And so those are the three things that are graded. Anything else? All right. So if you want to take a few minutes on Zoom or here in the room to write down a class for which you could envision incorporating this lesson, and it doesn't have to be elementary students. It could be high school students or a community group even, I mean, you could really take this in a lot of places. And then write down a topic, think through a topic that might be useful. And really the point of this activity is to get some ideas from all of you that might be able to stimulate other ideas and other people for their own courses. So it doesn't have to be within this structure that I've set up. So write down a topic you can envision your students exploring, and then you should have some kind of idea, like I said, of a hands-on activity that you could do for each of the topics, so that when the students come to you and they're like, I have no idea what to do to talk about how the ear catches sound waves, you can say, well, you can have a bowl of rice and put a saran wrap over it, and see how and bang on something else and see how the rice moves. So anyway, you can think of some things that they could possibly do. So I'll just give you a few minutes. I think I have a few minutes, right? A few minutes to do that. I'll give you about 30 more seconds to finish up your thoughts, and then if any of you would like to share, that would be great. All right. Anyone have any brilliant ideas you can share with the group, and anyone on the chat or in the room that wants to share their thoughts? Oh, good. Jade's coming through again as a student of mine. She was a great student in class, and she continues to be.
Thank you. So I predominantly will be teaching a cancer biology course in the fall.
Mhm.
And, it's mostly focusing on like molecular cellular mechanisms. And so a topic that students are always curious about very naturally is like how chemotherapy and how radiation works, but really isn't within the purview of the class, is like really related to how, we describe cancer. But I'm not a pharmacist, so it's a little bit outside of my ability to teach, but I think would be a really great way to allow students to explore that curiosity without dedicating so much lecture and class time to something that is really not in my lane of teaching.
Yeah, and it's really relevant to a lot of people, especially if you went to a high school. I think a lot of the high school students would really be interested in that topic too, and they would love that. I like that idea a lot. Yeah, that's good. The high school that Dr. Vidiello went to, their presentation, they entitled it "Lick Your Rats," and it was about that paper where the mama rat licked her pups and then didn't lick her pups, and the epigenetic changes between the rats that got licked and didn't get licked, and all those things. So that was funny, and a good catchy title, and really got the high school students interested in that, in epigenetics and in that topic. So that's another idea to think about. All right, great. Thank you so much for coming, and hope it was useful. Enjoy the rest of your day.